Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dennis. Welcome to Patina Code. This is So You Want to Build an AD.
I'm cold right out, I'm done. Come on.
Hello again, everybody, and once again, thank you for joining in for this edition of So You Want to Build an AD, powered by LS Fabrication. And today, now that we have our firewall installed, it's time to do some of the little things before we go into the final stages of all this. So one of the things we got to do is the heater core. Remember the heater core from the early beginning stages when we were taking the truck apart? I thought that we were going to, preserve and reuse that heater core. But then common sense kicked in and said, man, you damn fool, just buy a new heater core. It is quite expensive because it's the round style. It's $200 and some odd dollars. But to get away from having the headache of this one maybe going bad, perhaps going down the road, as I've had happen before, and I didn't quite like that experience, we're going to make sure that we put a fresh one in here. So today, we're going to be making the bracket to stand this off of the firewall. I do not want to drill the holes through the firewall and then drill the 3 holes that need to mount the heater core to the firewall, because we want to keep our firewall shape. So what that entails is us making a bracket and welding it to our firewall. That way the firewall will remain flush. I'm yet to determine where we're going to run the heater hoses in. We could go through the fender and through the inside to hide them to keep the firewall completely clean. We'll just have to see when that time comes, but we do know that we're going to step this thing off and back away from the firewall, so that way we do not have to drill into our firewall up here on the face of it. So we're just going to take some mild steel, bend it in an angle, and then weld it. We're going to get the circumference of where we need to make the mounting plate, and it's going to be quite simple. So here's our heater box, and we are yet to clean it up, obviously. This is the mounting surface. So what we're going to be doing basically is making a bracketry type thing to hold this on. So we're going to use some mild steel. We're going to have some mounts, and they'll be on the either side of this, and then use these holes to drill through and just make a plate. Basically, you're going to require a little welding and a little bit of fabrication, but it's going to be simple, and it's going to keep our firewall clean. I'm excited about doing this. The heater core is the exact replica of this, so the dimensions and all this will be the same, and I got that from Classic Parts of America. And then we will have our heater box ready to be installed. So we'll get the cage made up for it, get everything mounted up. We're going to test fit it, and then we're going to take it all down because we have to paint and prime and sound deaden the inside of this cab. So all this has to be done. All the cutting and welding and all this stuff that we have to do. We have to work on the dash a little bit. We have to work up there above the 5 windows to fix that mishap up. And we got a couple of other things that we need to remove out of the cab. And we don't want to get sparks and welding dust and all that on the sound deadening. And I don't feel like throwing down all the welding mats and all that. There's no point in it. We can do it now while everything is still bare metal. So I'm going to get to work on this. And at the end, we should have a mounting spot for our heater box. So the first thing we need to do is determine how far off of this firewall we need to have this heater box. We definitely want to be able to reach our hand up under there and attach the hoses that are going to feed the water to it with no issues. We don't want to have to fight and fuss with it, because when we do have to remove it and get the heater core out, we don't want any issues. We want to be able to install this and detach it if necessary with as much ease as possible. That's the whole point of building your own shit. You can make it to where things are simplified, even when you're doing custom things. So I'm just gonna set this up here. And this little thing is pretty stout as far as weight wise. So there's the firewall. And what I'm trying to do is locate, it's kind of tough to see what exactly I'm doing. What I need to do is determine how far this is from the firewall and then get a good measurement on that. So if I want to be somewhere about there, and that's going to give me 4 inches. So we're going to make this stand off 4¼ inches away from this firewall. That's going to give me plenty of room to get up there and hook up the hoses or detach them and then run the nuts down on the little threads there. So we're going to get our steel out and begin the cutting process. So lucky for me, we have scrap steel laying around here from various things over the years. Anyway, we have this 90-degree bend here, and this is important because we're going to mount this to the firewall. This is going to be our step off. So, you know, it's going to come back this way. You mount it like this, come back this way. So we know from just now when we were inside the cab, we're going to go 4¼ So we'll do a little over 4¼ to allow the cutting wheel to knock out its depth, but we're going to draw it back. So before we do that, I'm going to get the heater core, set it on here, and try to see where the holes mount in relation to that, and then pre-drill the holes and mount that on here just to see how that's going to go. We got a big piece, so we can mess up. So we're going to set this up to where the heater core, I guess you can make it any kind of way you want. Side by side, maybe? Because it's going to be the same distance regardless how it goes in. You're going to still have the same distance between the stupid little hoses here. So we're going to set ours up to where the top screw will be in the upper position, and then the 2 heater hoses, inlet outlets, will be on the sides. So the box will be like this facing us. This will be what's facing the firewall. So this will be the upper mounting position. These are the 2 sides for support, and then you have your hoses. Just gonna mark out around. And again, when you go to drill these holes out, you're going to want to drill them out. We're going to be making them for a 5/8 diameter heater hose, so they're going to be a little bigger than what we're drawing here. This is just give us our reference where to center the hole saw. I'm going to make the holes just a tad wider than what they need to be. And we can use washers. This is going to allow us a little bit of wiggle room in case, you know, we have to move things around. So now we have the 3 holes drilled for the mounting position. Now it's time to drill the holes for the inlet and outlet pipes on the heater core. So I'm going to take it all the way out to 1 1/8 inches. Like I said, those tubes are going to fit the 5/8 heater hose. Usually, you know, you would have a 5/8 and 3/4. So we're just wanting to account for the rubber hose that's going to be slipping on these. So that 5/8 diameter hose is actually going to be a little wider. So we're just going to step it on out to 1 1/8 inches. So we're going to get a bigger step drill and widen this hole as wide as we can, because we marked the holes, but we, you know how things go. You might have to kind of shift it here, shift it there, move it this, there, this, or that. You get them exactly to the diameter you need, you're going to be rubbing up against that, and to have the heater core rubbing, it's not a good idea. So we're going to widen the holes here. We elongated or widened the holes for the tubes to flow through. So now we'll be able to set this in, and it lays flush. And the heater hoses do not have to be all the way up on here. So we're going to stop right here. But there is enough clearance between the holes that I cut around the tube, so it's not going to get caught rubbing or vibrating against there. The mounting position screw holes are there, so we're going to be able to secure it tightly. We're going to have to run a washer on this one, but that's okay because I made one hole a little wider than it should have been. Not a big deal. Now it's going to be time to get all this marked and then cut out, so that way we can go continue with the next step of what it is that we're trying to achieve with this little bit of a project here. So I'm satisfied with it. It's not
perfect. In my mind, I thought I was gonna have something perfect, but hey, I guess that's what happens in hot rodding.
You know, and this isn't a structural piece, so we're good. As long as the tubes aren't hitting the bracing, we're perfectly fine. We need to mark this out and get an idea of how we want this. And again, we don't have to be all the way up here. We just need to cut right along the base of it, because that's what's going to be holding on. Nothing's going to be holding this on. We just need where the mounting position is to be cut out and have that there and have it strengthened on. So without further ado, we're going to mark this out. I'm going to mark it here, there, and then of course I'm going to get the tape out and make sure that we got this thing marked where I want it. And you know what, we're just going to use the edge here. That's what we'll do. And hell, we'll just use the edging of that there as well. So let's come up here to the top. And we'll just kind of do one of these numbers. Kind of go around the heater core. Maybe it'll have like a little design to it. And then we'll make it flow over like so. Like that. And again, it don't have to be perfect. It just has to be fitting. And it's going to fit. That's the mission. And it's going to be a solid mount for our heater core. Now we have a good bare metal surface for us to weld to. We're going to be putting the ends on like this, so we're going to want to weld. And then we will clean all the paint off of this, get it repainted, reprimed, but then we will be covering this with the interior fabric, whatever color that may be, somewhere down the future, so it won't just be a piece of steel. But this is our faceplate, so it'll mount like this. And then we're gonna have the two ends, which we're getting ready to cut right now. With our one-piece cut, now we just simply lay it across here and we trace it out so that we get the exact same size. I did cut, as I would advise anybody, I cut a little over the size that it actually needs to be. We can always go back and cut it loose, but right now we want to make sure that, you know, we stay within the spec. Just like that, we got our secondary piece. Now we're gonna clean these off, get the rough edges off, get the paint off, get everything stitched together. It's all done. Got her all seamed up. Now we just knock the paint of it off. And then we have to figure out where we're going to mount this inside our truck. So our heater core is going to have a nice secure place. We're going to weld these tabs to the inside of the firewall. We will have no protrusion of the heater hoses or the mounting screws for that heater core. I have yet to decide where we're going to come in at on the truck. It won't be on the firewall, it might be through the toe board, we'll just have to see. But right now we have our mount, our bracket, and it's sturdy. It's got a little flex in the center, but that's okay. You know, it's thick. This is a heavy piece of steel, so we're not worried about any of that. Once we get this welded on, get our core set, we're gonna be ready to rock and roll when it's time to hit the road. So let me pick this thing up, give you guys a demonstration. So imagine this is the inside of the firewall. This be like this. The hoses go through. Then we'll mount it to the truck and it'll be held up and we have our pass through. So it's going to be sitting a little bit off of the firewall, but that's going to ensure that I can get behind here to hook up the hoses. As you can see, from this point to that point is a little over 4 3/8 of an inch. Plenty of room for me to get my hand in there and do what I need to do. It's gonna be dope, man. It's all part of the process. We have to get this done before we start putting in our sound deadener, and we have a few other things that we need to take care of on the inside of the cab, but I'm just glad to get this part of it done. So we got our spot marked out, we got our bracket made. We're just gonna tack it in real quick. We got the spot weld holes. Now we just need to spot weld it in. So after we get it all spot welded in throughout this, we're gonna take our time though. We can't just run through it. We're gonna have to skip around just like everything else. And then once it's all tacked in, I'll run a bead here, here, and here, here, just to have a little bit more security. So now that I'm done with the welding and the slight bit of grinding I had to do, I didn't quite get all of the holes filled with spot welds, so I ended up welding on the ridges and over on the tops. But it's in, so the bracing for our heater, it's in there. It ain't coming out. So now we're gonna just do a little test fit. You guys will get to see how it's gonna look once it's all done. The yellow come off, of course, and then we gotta clean off the heater box, but let's get a look at how it's gonna look while it's installed. So we're gonna have to go up and under like so. And this is kind of like practice runs for when we get the new core in there, because we don't want to mess up the outlets and inlets. Let's see, will it stay up there? All right, so it'll be, of course, upright a little more, but we'll let it hang there. So that's how it's gonna look once it's installed. It's gonna work out pretty good. You'll have plenty of space for a passenger to sit and put their feet. Their feet can still reach the toe board if necessary, but you know, your feet stay in this area here. So now is the time, guys, where I'm getting all the interior stuff tidied up, because we are getting ready to get the sound deadener put in. So we got to get the floor scrubbed down, get it primed, get some paint on it, throw the sound deadener on, because we don't want to weld with the sound deadener. So we got to work on the dash next, and then we need to work up here in the 5-window area, both sides where they tried to put a speaker. So we're going to fix all that up, and hopefully we'll have everything done inside the cab, and we can get that sound deadener down and then move on to some more of the external parts. I'm working on this truck. I'm happy with the way this turned out. I am. I'm just happy with it, because I always believe in having heater for the defrost purposes. So I'm happy with it. I'm excited that it's going to work out the way that I planned, and it looks good. So hopefully that'll inspire you guys to do the same thing. If you don't want to have to run the holes through your firewall, let's have a look on the other side, since we're speaking on that. And here's what we got. So you can see where we welded it on. And as careful as I was, I did get a little too rambunctious. We got a little bit of distortion there, but that's okay. Nothing a little Phil couldn't take care of, but all the rest of it's still good and intact. And then we got a little bit right here I can feel, but that's just how shit goes in the struggle, man. But I think it's going to be all right. It's going to be perfect. So now we need to move on and get the rest of the inside of this truck straightened out.
That's going to do it for this edition of So You Want to Build an AD. I appreciate you tuning in and checking out this build. And this is all done from a non-professional perspective. I'm just laying this stuff out there for you to put your own spin on things, or you can go along and do it such as you see the way that I'm doing it. The next episode, we're going to begin with cleaning up the inside of our cab. We got to get the dash knocked down, and then we got to start working on this atrocity that we have above the sight windows here in our 5-window cab. From there, we're going to install our brackets for our speakers and get our head unit brackets installed and mounted up in the truck. So that way, when it's time to go with that, we'll be ready to go. Once again, I appreciate you guys checking this out. Thanks for watching. Stay with me.